Van. But first of all, where does all this leave Europe, which had been drawing up a list of tariffs it was thought would be revealed next week? But the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen saying Trump's latest decision marks an important step to stabilising the global economy. We'll be crossing to Brussels then to talk to our correspondent Dave Keating, who joins us from there. So Dave, where does this leave Europe then?
This is a very awkward situation for the European Union because, as we just heard in that clip, President Trump said the reason he was pausing the extra tariffs, the tariffs beyond 10% for all of the 60 naughty countries except China, was because no one retaliated except China. The problem is the EU did retaliate. Just yesterday, national governments took a vote approving retaliatory tariffs against 20 billion euros worth of U.S. imports, and those are supposed to take effect on Tuesday. However, those retaliatory tariffs are not for the 20% Liberation Day tariffs that Trump unveiled last week. It's a delayed reaction to the 25% tariff on steel and aluminum that Trump had put in place in February. Essentially, it's just kind of a coincidence that the vote took place yesterday. So now the EU is not really sure what they're supposed to do. The talk in Brussels this morning is speculation. Basically, did the White House understand the nuance that those tariffs approved yesterday, are actually not for the 20% tariffs, but rather the steel and aluminum tariffs, which have not been paused? Those are still going to be in effect. Or did the White House not get the news that the EU, in fact, had adopted retaliatory tariffs? And that's a big question over what the EU should do next. Should they pause these retaliatory tariffs, even though the thing they're retaliating against has not been paused? They have to act fast because, as I said, they're supposed to take effect on Tuesday. That's just a first round. So that what's supposed to take effect on Tuesday is 3.5 billion of the 20 billion, and then the biggest amount of it is supposed to take effect actually next month in May. I have a feeling, as a compromise, they may just combine those first two rounds and have them both take effect in May to give some breathing room here, because there's two schools of thought. One is they see that Trump didn't back down in the face of China's retaliation, and actually that's resulted in this spiral that has gotten tariffs now up to 125%. So it seems like the retaliation just seems to make things worse. On the other hand, the fact that China retaliated and that the EU was preparing retaliation contributed to the market panic. And that market panic, Trump has said, again, there in the clip, that's what motivated him to pause the tariffs. So you can kind of see good arguments on both sides. It's a confusing situation for the EU. If they want to change those tariffs, they need to do another vote.
Certainly is very confusing, Dave. It's brilliant that we've got you there to explain it to us, to try and follow it. It's all very volatile as well, isn't it? Not just the markets that we were talking about before, but Trump himself as well. I mean, who knows what might come next?
Well, the lack of predictability here is obviously the problem. And in her statement this morning, President von der Leyen said that at the same time that the EU welcomes this news, they are also looking for other trade partners, that they're also looking around the world. And actually, right now, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez is on his way to China. There was a phone call that took place yesterday between the EU president and her counterpart in China, talking about strengthening relations in light of the U.S. aggression. In the short term, they just have to coordinate with China the dumping that's inevitably going to take place here of products that were intended for the U.S. market that are now going to get dumped here in Europe, most likely. That's going to result in some bargain bin prices for consumers over the coming weeks. But in the long run, it's not good news for the EU economy getting that kind of dumping. And the Commission stands ready to respond to individual products that it sees are flowing into the EU too much. But in the longer term, they're talking to China, they're talking to India, they're talking to Brazil, and some are even suggesting they should start talking to Russia about replacing the trade volume that will be lost with the United States. Because even though this reprieve has been granted here and the markets are reacting in this way, the fact is this is still all very unpredictable. And as we saw with Canada and Mexico, who were subject to tariffs before anyone else, this just results in a kind of, in this case, quarterly revisiting of this uncertainty. and the pattern is just going to continue. And again, so many different voices here in Brussels just confused about what they should do. Should they continue with the retaliation tactic? Should they go the China route, the Canada route, or should they go the UK route, have no response at all, keep quiet? Honestly, there's good arguments for both sides here, and it is a live debate. They have to decide quickly, though, as I said.
Dave, thanks very much. Dave Keating, our correspondent, joining us there from Brussels. I'm going to pick up on